Can you think of a movie that changes its aspect ratio? A moment where the screen suddenly snaps into a completely new size, slowly widens or compresses to the point of being easily noticed. Most of the time, these moments are special occasions. While The Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson arguably led to the popularization of the technique, it's still not used as often as, say, a dolly zoom. Unless you're Christopher Nolan, who does whatever the hell he wants. The point is, changing aspect ratio is often used with intent behind it. Whether your eye saw the TV glow, or WandaVision, or Enchanted, changing the size of the screen can be utilized as symbolism for multiple things, either encroaching terror and isolation, switching of time period, or the literal crossing of boundaries between realities. But what I find most fascinating about the effect is that it is an inherently fourth wall breaking one. All of these moments, subtle or not, remind the audience that they are experiencing a story by changing how much or how little you see of it on your screen. Yet despite that, or maybe even because of that, these moments don't break immersion. Because all of these moments are meant to be disorienting or surreal, the viewer experiences that disorientation alongside the characters. By breaking the fourth wall, by utilizing the format of cinema, it truly shows what is going on in a story rather than it just being told to us. The fourth wall is broken to allow you further inside. Video games are a fascinating medium of storytelling. For many years, due to technical limitations, narratives were not placed as a priority in creating them. In many cases, even for some of the oft considered best of all time, story was barely an afterthought to gameplay. But since its inception, video game stories and worlds have grown to a level of sophistication that is earning them adaptations to other mediums and extremely dedicated fan bases. And the reason for that is because video games now have just as many tools as TV or film to tell their stories. Every gameplay mechanic, side quest, environment design, and item can contribute to the story in the same way as the angle of a camera, a costume, or a sound effect can. That's what I want to talk about today. I want to celebrate the medium of video games and the unique ways that stories are told through it. Show how gameplay can be useful at communicating a story rather than just a tool to keep players' attention. Though with this comparison, I have to add a bit more clarity as to what I am talking about here. When I highlight the moments in video games that utilize their assets to tell the story, I'm not talking about what I would call the cinemification of games. The adoption of techniques and attributes of films and TV in presentation, such as God of War having more handheld camera work. Absolutely nothing wrong with that approach, those decisions worked for what those games were trying to do. But what I'm interested in today is gameplay elements, things that you can only find in video games, that serve the story in the same way as film and TV do. While I'm sure we could find many different examples of this phenomenon, I'm limiting our discussion to just 3 games. 3 games that take advantage of their unique gameplay mechanics to inform and ultimately enhance the story. So, let us begin. There's a weird relationship between foresight and video games. Foresight is the act of being able to glimpse into the future regardless of how far or for how long. It's pretty much self-contained spoilers for any given narrative. And the most frequent version of foresight isn't the one that has the player seeing a future that is sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Most of the time, a video game story only introduces foresight to flash massive red flags to an outcome to be avoided. For example, in Fire Emblem Awakening, the game opens with a premonition and focuses not just as an intro to the main villain and main characters, but very clearly sets up something that needs to be avoided. A character dying. Foresight is something that calls the player into action and gives them a goal to strive for. For the rest of the game, you are fully committed, either consciously or not, to stopping that future from coming true. But where this weird relationship becomes apparent is in the fact that foresight is both a feature that incentivizes the player into action, but also relegates that feature to outside of the player's control. In many of the examples I brought up, foresight is contained to just storytelling parts of a video game, in cutscenes or scripted moments of gameplay. There is a leash put on the player's ability to tell the future because, obviously, how would the developers be able to predict that the player is going to be just fishing while the world burns around them at a later point in the game? Foresight is not something that is fully put into gameplay, because gameplay is what separates a video game from a TV show or movie. It's where the player has an impact on what happens, and a dev cannot accurately predict what every recipient of their game will do. Unless you're Tetsuya Takahashi. Instead of foresight being regulated to just cutscenes and isolated moments, Xenoblade Chronicles just shoves the ability into the hands of any player that controls Shulk, the main character of the game. Due to being the accepted wielder of the Monado, a red sword real good at destroying mechanical life, Shulk can see momentary glimpses of the future. The story obviously goes nuts with this, having multiple major moments being centered around what Shulk sees and how he and his friends are supposed to react, most of the time poorly and choosing to fight against the scene result. Both Sharla and Melia become party members because of Shulk saving them from an untimely fate. However, it's in the gameplay where Shulk's visions become invaluable. During combat, visions have only one trigger, a highly damaging or potentially fatal attack coming from an opponent. You are given the option to either leave it alone and deal with the consequences yourself, or warn another party member and temporarily gain control of them to counteract. Usually players just stick to Shulk, and if they have their talent art charged, just cast Monado Shield and hey guys, you'll hear something? If you play your cards right or occasionally get lucky, you can either nullify the attack completely or kill the enemy before the vision happens. This makes them indispensable, and even during certain bosses, the player's only ticket to victory. Instead of foresight being limited to just the story, it creates a system of combat that the player is familiar with, one that the player relies on throughout their journey. So of course the visions come from a wrathful god bent on genocide. The reveal of Zanza being both the ultimate villain and the originator of the visions is such a brilliant twist because of this mechanic. Throughout the entire game, the player has deeply familiarized themselves with the visions. They've become reliant on these glimpses, dependent on them. And that's what makes this reveal all the more painful and all the more amazing. But it wasn't enough to make an egomaniacal nutcase the donor. Nah. They had to twist the knife even further and reveal that they weren't just visions, they were the blueprints of a villain's resurrection. Zanza threw these bad scenarios at Shulk and the party, knowing that they'd want to change the outcome, which directly plays into his plans to get rid of Mechonis. The game literally spells it out, just add acid to the gunshot.
So then, Shulk's ability to use the Monado.
And those visions that he used to save us.
All because of Lord Zanza. Lord Zanza can see the passage of fate. He simply led you to the inevitable.
Dixon's next words directly reference moments in the story that were planned and outside of your control, the conventional way foresight is used in video games. But that does not diminish the fact that for the past 20 plus hours, you have been getting by the skin of your teeth, thanks to a god that wants to destroy an entire race just so he can bring all of existence back under his thumb. All of those battles you've won, all of them were to get you to this moment. All of it was for Zanza. And it gets even worse when you remember that another major perk was given to the player earlier in the game. One that allowed previously invincible enemies to be damaged was given by Zanza. Every player's first impression of this character is as a slightly shady yet ultimately helpful higher being who just hands over the silver bullet against the machine that killed your best friend. We already have a perception of who this person is, only for it to get thrown out the window. Oh, you thought I was helping you? Yeah, I was. While you were cleaning up all of my obstacles, leaving nobody to stop me for when I make my grand entrance. Every time you thought you were making a difference and stopping evil, you were just playing into my hand. Sucker. This all plays into Xenoblade Chronicles' main theme of fate and agency. Do we follow the path preordained for us, or do we make our own path? What is our capability to even change our path? Throughout the game, Shulk and the party are constantly confronted with things that exist as they are. Mechonis hates Bionis, and the High-Endia stay isolated. The visions themselves are an externalization of the status quo. What will happen if things are not changed? But it's not as simple as status quo is bad and has to be fought. The game shows how easy it is for one to fall into patterns they're trying to break, how these altruistic reasons get co-opted for more nefarious behavior. Or, as a wise old turtle once said,
"One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it."
It isn't enough for Shulk and the party to prevent the deaths they see. They have to create a world that wouldn't require visions at all. A world with no gods. And in order to do that, they need to break the cycle of control that created the gods in the first place. Shulk needs to let go of being defined by the future and embrace the uncertainty of life. Shulk gives up control, and in doing so, regains his ability to make his own future, to encounter each day as it comes. Xenoblade Chronicles uses its approach to foresight as a way to make the player embrace the unpredictability of life itself, by associating a previously considered useful mechanic as the tool of the villain. It elevates the game's discussion of fate to a level that wouldn't have been possible had it just been shown to them. Marinating the player in that feature makes the knife twist more emotional, makes them hate Zanza instantly, which makes them fight much harder to break his hold on the world. What better way to motivate the player into action than by revealing that their actions were never just their own? Cooperation is a concept that is specifically interesting when it comes to video games. Outside of not being able to have one at all without the effort of hundreds of developers working together, many video games are centered around having to work together with other players. It's one of the many things that the medium can do that TV or movies can't. But with this perk, there seems to be quite the contentious relationship between cooperation and video games as a whole. AI-controlled characters not attacking when you need to, or just plain photobombing, other players deliberately trolling during an important objective. It can be rough out there. People play video games often to feel in control, to guide the direction of a journey in any way that they can. So it's quite frustrating when, either intentionally or not, that control is taken away from them, and they're left at the mercy of poor game design. So how do you create a game where cooperation is not only fundamental to game design, but enjoyable and inviting to the player? Unlike JRPGs, Journey is a video game that does not rely on story to drive direction. One could argue that there even is a story to begin with. There's no dialogue, hardly any characters. World building occurs merely in cutscenes or scattered pictures throughout the environment. The only goal you have is simply making your way to the top of a mountain. Not exactly something you'd expect to be a pioneer of video game storytelling. But even if the story is much lighter on the ground than you'd expect, that doesn't mean there isn't one being told. And that story isn't just being propped up through a game mechanic. The game mechanic is the story. When you first begin, movement starts out as extremely simplistic, walking around at a pretty slow pace. But as you go further into the game, you come across these mysterious sentient paper flocks. If you sound the speak command close enough, they will gather to you and give you the ability to fly. Yeah, you heard that right. Fly. You can fly in this game, only through the help of these creatures. Every single level in the game forces you to find and commune, for lack of a better word, with them, which will help you change this scarf on your back. As you complete each level, it gets longer, thus allowing you to fly for a longer period of time. But even then, you will still have to recharge eventually. No matter how powerful you get, you still have to rely on the sentient paper. I can understand some players being hesitant to this, especially when it comes to performing a task and the AI, as it is oft to do in art, just flat out doesn't like you. It makes the experience a lot less enjoyable for a lot of people, which creates a preemptive fear of having to deal with NPCs in all kinds of games. Journey is not like that. Well, we would be correct in classifying these creatures as NPCs. You don't interact with them in the way you would with a human NPC. In fact, even in their design, they resemble sea creatures more than anything else. They are recognizable to any player, but not to the point of actually getting to know them. There is still a sense of distance between you and them, a disconnect in the lack of ability to properly communicate. Yet the game forces you to form a partnership with these things if you want to achieve your goal. That partnership, forged out of survival, is actually the language the world of Journey can no longer speak. Like much in the game, the sentient paper is not properly explained, only implied. It's very clear that this is meant to be a civilization once advanced that has since fallen, with all the littered ruined buildings, rusted machinery, and multiple graves that greet you at the start of the game. But for all of the things that are in the game, there is one thing that is conspicuously absent. Plants. There is no biological life, no flora, nothing. And the game's cutscenes explain why. Whatever previous civilization existed here did have plant life. The denizens lived in harmony with nature. They relied on it. It is even because of nature that they are alive at all. Then they got greedy. They built massive towers specifically over the plant life. They built machines specifically intended to end life itself. The pact between nature and man was broken, and thus, on its own, the civilization died due to infighting, leaving nothing but vast expanses of desert. Like Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and Mad Max Fury Road, community as a concept has been abandoned, and as such, life is gone, leaving nothing but reminders of hubris and abandonment. Except that's not entirely true. You still have people to rely on in this world. All you have to do is ask for it. You have to place your trust into these creatures you cannot speak to, and in doing so, that's what helps you achieve your goal. And this reliance isn't just limited to the paper creatures. This white figure you come across at the end of each level is one of your ancestors, who helps increase your ability to fly for longer periods of time. Presumably, this ancestor was around when the civilization fell to ruin, who witnessed firsthand what communities being broken can do on both micro and macro scale. The protagonist of Journey is not only fixing the mistakes of the past by reconnecting the environment, but is helped along by one of their own kind, someone who lived through the consequences of hubris. Journey is a video game that is fundamentally connected to solidarity, and reinforces that through its fundamental mechanics. For a game that does not tell its story through conventional means, it uses the fundamentals of video games as a shorthand for its themes. You may not be told the story, but you certainly do experience it. There are some aspects of video games that seem impervious to change. In a multiplayer shooter, you might be able to run out of ammo, but the display of how much ammo you have does not go away once you run out. They become so ingrained in the player's mind that one can often take them for granted. They become background noise, blurred out images on the side of your screen that you still have to engage with from time to time. Or so you'd think. In the rare instances where the seemingly unchangeable aspects are in fact changed, the game rightly treats them as a big deal. Changing a system that the player is not only intimate with, but cannot operate the game without, is going to be attention-grabbing no matter how you approach it. However, unlike our previous examples, where gameplay elements are woven organically into the world and story, these changes are experiences that are mainly held by you and you alone. NPCs can't see the minimap being removed from your UI unless you're somehow beaming your screen above your head. Except for one instance, where even though the UI change is experienced by yourself, the information and feeling you obtain from it is felt even by the non-player characters. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is what I would confidently call a miracle of storytelling. When it was originally greenlit, the developers only had 1 entire year to get the game from concept to completion, which you can see the marks of throughout. The repeated assets, the very small world, and of course, the 3-day time limit. Zelda games have been extremely good at making sure their gameplay features are as loud and as game-defining as possible. Terminator, Our Flag Means Death, early 2000s edginess, flying, and just sci-fi. Majora's Mask is no exception, with the game literally incorporating it into the UI itself at all times. No matter where you are in the game, you will always be reminded of how much time you have left. This extends to even when you travel in time, where the game flashes these now iconic screens telling you how much time before things go to shit. You simply cannot afford to stop and smell the poisonous flowers. You have to plan out every single day, especially if you want to 100% complete the game. This has often been lauded as the hardest Zelda game of all time, because outside of being a game full of scary moments, it is a scary game to tackle in its entirety due to stress. And then at the end of the game, when Majora's Mask is defeated, when the moon is either destroyed or returned to orbit, you get this. What makes this moment so amazing is how it loudly contrasts itself from the previous time limit system. Pay attention to what is on screen here. There's no marker of how many hours are left. The color scheme is now white background and black text, not black background with white text. And the wording is different. Instead of numbered words, the first, second, and final, we have a new day. All of the stress, the worry, and dread you have come to associate with this screen throughout your entire playtime has been completely flipped on its head. And what makes it even better is this stretch of the game where you went without reminders of it. When the player first enters the moon, you are greeted with this area. A green field, birds and insects chirping, the rustling grass. More importantly, there is no time limit UI. While there are reminders of your impending tasks, such as the routine shaking of the screen and rumbling sound effects, they don't bear down on the player to the same degree that the UI had been doing throughout the game. The stress is still there, but it is lessened. This makes the expectation subversion more believable. For the final moments of the game, you are placed in a far less stressful environment, allowing your mind to naturally come down from the high it's been operating at throughout your playtime, so that when the flip does occur, it's a natural progression and less of a jarring end. It comes as a shock because you forgot about it, a final nail in the coffin that, yes, it is in fact truly over. I started this video talking about aspect ratio change, discussing how video games can replicate the fourth wall breaking, yet immersive, impactful moments they can have on a viewer. And across all of the examples we've covered, that assertion remains. By connecting gameplay features like combat mechanics, movement, and even UI, video games are able to reach heights of storytelling on the same level as movies and TV by utilizing their unique traits and presentation to their highest effect. And what makes all of these moments so great is not just that they affect you, but everyone around you. They are not just a way to connect to a game's story in a one-to-one exchange, despite being delivered through a limited format. They impact how you view all other aspects. The visions impact all characters to varying degrees. Movement in Journey is a communal act, and all of the people of Termina know it is a new day. All art is meant to connect human beings, and these moments not only connect us to the stories themselves, but to other people.